listen to the last strains of the harp music. It's wonderful.
Always, it mixes in really nicely with the birds this time of year.
Indeed. All right, this is Warren and Will's Wild Wine Reviews. I'm Warren.
I'm Will.
Once again, I'm a featured endorser on Vivino. Otherwise, I'm pretty much a publisher. I publish books and I publish magazines, and I've been in rock and roll bands, and I love wine.
And I do ebook formatting for this guy.
That's true.
Although that's not how we know each other.
No.
That's a function of
wine
us
is how we know each other.
Correct. Yeah. It was. I think it was Keshava that introduced us.
Yes, it was.
It was at. I remember exactly when it was. It was the release of the Red Rooster Coffee Stout at Dogtown.
Which I didn't have any of because I'm not a coffee stout drinker.
Right.
But
I remember you being there, and I had seen you before, and Kesh was like, "You guys should meet. You both like wine." And we immediately hit it off.
And started talking wine.
We started talking wine.
Here we are, 5, 6, 7 years later.
Yeah.
We've had hundreds, if not thousands, of bottles together since then. I mean, that sounds like an exaggeration, but I didn't get onto the Vino app until a couple of years ago. Actually, at this point, 5 years ago, we've been drinking together for 7 or 8 years, and I've done 2,000 reviews.
Well, if we did one bottle a week, that would be at least 400. Yeah. And we've done more than one bottle a week sometimes. So yeah,
most of them here in this gazebo.
Yep. Sometimes at Wine Lab.
Yep.
Anyway.
At any rate, we are here today to take a look at the Wente wine, and they're really best known for their whites. They are the first family in Chardonnay. So, of course, we're going to review their Cabernet Sauvignon instead.
Right.
Because that's just who we are.
Well, I mean, if you look at it from that standpoint, I mean, how much info is there about the Wente Chardonnay clone? Probably a lot.
Yeah.
It might be good to hit on some of their reds and be like, hey, these guys are known for more than just their white wines. If their white wines are selling themselves, we don't really need to toss them any...
Yeah, no, this part's true. I mean, basically, I'm just looking to drink good wine and let you know about it. I'm not looking to trash anybody.
Nope.
Though, if we open a bottle and it's not there, we're going to trash it.
Yep.
I don't think that's going to happen. I've had several bottles of this, and it's quite good.
Yeah.
So, without much further ado, let's pour away.
It'll be interesting at some point to do a bottle that we've never had before.
Well, that will happen.
Several
we
of the
are
wines...
starting out with a bunch of ones that we know.
Right.
We know we like them so that we can kind of set a tone. We are not homers. We are not here to pitch wines that people have asked us to pitch to you. We're drinking wines that we enjoy and talking to you about it. And once we get moving and we do a whole bunch of wines, then we're going to hit some that we haven't tried and we won't know for certain. And some of those are going to miss.
But by and large, I mean, we come in with open minds and open palates. And
very much so.
if we don't like something, we like to think it's at very least because we're trying to judge it on the same scale that we judge everything else.
One of the things that I love to do is blind tastings. You know, that really teaches you to taste your palate. Trust your palate. It really teaches you to trust your palate.
Well, and I've also learned to trust my palate at tastings that weren't blind because some of the tastings we went to a wine lab back in 2019 where they're trying all these old wines and people are talking about how great they are, and you and I were looking at each other going,
they're out of their minds.
It's the Emperor's New Clothes phenomenon. Yeah. You feel like you have to, and so you just...
They never had a 40-year-old wine before. And
exactly.
You never had a wine that tasted like vinegar before. That's cool.
Well, I mean, the thing is that I found myself like really searching around for a descriptor, and I was like,
Interesting.
Have you ever been in an old academic building and when the radiator kicks on in the winter, this wine tastes like that smells?
Oh yeah. There was some very musty.
But I wasn't saying it to be mean. I was so happy because I'd finally found the descriptor I was
None
looking
of
for.
that fits this Wente.
No, it does not.
So let's talk about what we got here.
Very dark. Very very like to me immediately just like dark fruit, like blackberry.
Yeah.
Not would you say like a stony character? Like a
there's
slate,
definitely slate. Slate is in there mixed in with the oak.
It kind of helps that it's this kind of mist because
a little wax too.
Yeah,
paraffin
it's always neat on days like this when you like how often do you smell wet stone, and on days like this it's like all you can smell, and so it's like that was immediately in the forefront of my mind.
And there's a really large wall around a beach in front of this gazebo that has been rained on today, and we definitely
we are literally surrounded by minerality.
But that's
right
not
now.
what we're smelling here.
No, it's not.
Actually. And I've had this before. I know what it smells like, but this is very nice.
It's not quite the black slate of the Priorat.
No,
but
it's
getting sort of into that like wet gravel, wet stone. It's not earth either. It's very distinctly that stony minerality as opposed
to the word for just before it rains. The smell.
Oh,
there is a word. I know.
geosmin.
No,
geosmin is how wet earth smells.
Oh, well, if Angela's here, she would just spit it out, but she's not. So
I need to know that one. That sounds like a handy one.
Yeah, we may even edit that out. Who knows? But.
Oh yeah, and the dark fruit. I mean, it's blackberry jam. That's just blackberry
with a hint of
preserves.
vanilla, maybe a little French vanilla.
Yeah,
and almost got that hazelnut.
Now this is really interesting because from the aroma, I would not have guessed that there was a sweet fruit character underlying.
There really is.
It's not prominent, but it is definitely
and the
there.
Aftertaste is really nice.
The aftertaste is very. That's where the vanilla I think really kicks in. Is the dark fruit kind of washes away, and you're left with kind of like this figgy or caramelly sort of flavor on the back end.
So according to Vivino, this is the national price for this is $16.90 or $16.49,
which is crazy when you consider this is a single vineyard.
Yeah, no, it's really good, and I paid $25 for it because I live in the middle of freaking nowhere.
Yep, we pay an opportunity cost out here, or lack of opportunity cost.
There's only 15,000 people in our entire county.
Yep,
I live 6 miles outside of the town that has 500 people.
Yep,
so it's small.
And the problem with Southwest Virginia in general is that there is not the same wine drinking culture here that there would be in, say, Charlottesville.
However, we do have
Richmond.
one decent little wine shop. It's called the Republic of Floyd. That's where I purchased this from. So they have, I would say, there's 10 decent to very good bottles of wine there at any time.
Yep.
We live in a place where we can just drive a little further, half hour away is one of the best wine shops. In America, if not the the region, if not America. I like America, and that's called Vintage Cellar. Also, the Wine Lab is also in Blacksburg, and it's top notch.
Yes,
so we can get great wines. But the thing is, people about to show up. You don't have any wine. That's never going to happen to me. But say you weren't me, and you didn't have 100 bottles in your cellar.
Right.
Then you could pop down into this tiny little town,
and
there are at least 10 bottles of wine you won't be ashamed to open up for even a wine snob.
Which
that's a nice thing to have.
Which is really not true across a lot of America.
No, it is sure not.
Yeah.
It is sure. I go to sometimes the cities, and I'm even in a major city, and I can't find a wine shop that's got anything I want to drink.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly not at prices that are worth,
Well, and in larger cities, I mean, one of the things is that there are good wine shops, but you have to find them. Yeah. And sometimes that can be the result of
the internet helps me there.
It does, definitely, absolutely.
I found one good wine shop in all of Ireland, and that was, I don't remember the place, I'm sorry, guys, but it was in Galway.
Yeah.
And I walked out with a couple of American, it was the only time that I saw Napa cabs in Europe.
Really?
The whole time I was there.
Surprising.
There was never any in Malta.
Huh.
When people found out that I'd had over 100 Napa cabs, they were absolutely shocked.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you said there wasn't much of a variety, but I mean, Napa is one of the
there was plenty of variety.
Yeah.
There just wasn't a much. They had a Gothic red, and they had like Ghost Pine, I think it is, and that's it. That's all they had.
I don't even know that one.
They're a Washington, and I probably have it might be Ghost something. I think it's Ghost Pines. It's a Washington cab that doesn't suck.
Right.
I'm not seeking it out, but it doesn't suck.
The thing about certain brands is that they're just kind of ubiquitous. You go across
they're
the
not
globe and
aiming.
them.
They're not aiming for people who like $100 bottles of wine. So can't fault them for not hitting what they didn't aim at.
And also, if the price is right, people are just going to buy them just to have something. I mean, the way I look at it is it's kind of like when we think of certain types of things, whether it's even here domestically in America, you go anywhere and you're going to find Liberty Creek, and you're going to find
don't drink that.
Don't drink Liberty Creek. But let's go a little bit higher than that. You're
going to find the Predator.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like you go to any Food Lion here in Virginia, other grocery store. Yeah. You were going to find certain types of brands that are ubiquitous.
You're going to find, what is it, Dreaming Tree?
Dreaming Tree.
And that just proves that just because you have a lot of money and you're a rock and roll band doesn't mean you can make good wine.
Well, Dreaming Tree is Dave Matthews, right?
Right, Dave Matthews.
Now, the interesting thing is Dave Matthews has another winery here in Virginia called Blenheim. And
there's his problem. It's here in Virginia.
Well, no, actually,
is it up in Northern Virginia?
No, it's outside. It's in Charlottesville.
Charlottesville, okay.
The thing about Charlottesville, the Monticello wine region in general, is that being in the foothills means that if you are careful about site selection, you can actually wind up with some very good wines because we've talked about the types of reds that we like here in Virginia. One of them is Cab Franc.
Yep.
And Cab Franc is basically impossible to grow west of the Blue Ridge Plateau. Just because it is a late ripener, and it needs to get to a certain sugar level, and even for it to even be usable, because of its really low pH and high acidity. So a good place for Cab Franc is what's called the Sunrise.
I think I like it more than I do.
What, Cab Franc?
Cab Franc, yeah. I mean, I like it.
No,
all right,
I don't. I would say it's probably not heavy enough for you.
Yeah.
It's got the right body and texture, or got the right acidity and texture, but not the right body
really
and weight.
What I was talking about and thinking about.
Yeah. It does make a great blending varietal for you because it gives those aspects.
Although I'm going to be honest, my favorite blending varietal is probably
Petit Verdot? Petit Verdot.
No,
Absolutely.
Petit Syrah.
Oh, Petit Syrah,
Because I just love, you can just really punch up a wine that otherwise is kind of thin.
With a very small amount.
Yeah, 4%, and boom, the thing just pops.
The Petit Syrah is kind of the European equivalent of Norton. Have you ever had a Norton?
No.
Norton is interesting because it's actually a triple hybrid. It's a Vitis vinifera, Vitis labrusca hybrid that somehow got crossed.
I say I haven't, but I've had so many wines, I probably have.
It's descended from 2 American species and 1 Europe, and the Vitis vinifera.
He knows way more about wine than I do. I've got to say that.
There's books written about Norton.
But yeah.
But the thing about Norton, it really is one of those. You love it or you hate it, and I know that people are going to be like, oh, well, that's true of a lot of things. It's like, no, I mean, there really is no in between on Norton. No one's indifferent about it. But part of the reason that people aren't indifferent about it is that at 2 to 4%, you can pick it up in a wine. Yeah. I've poured wines. People are like, is there Norton in this? I'm like, yeah, there's about 2%. I'm like, I knew it. I could taste it. I don't like it.
The Petit Syrah really helps give some body and some heft.
Yeah, and some
to a wine,
some inkiness and some jamminess.
Yeah, with just a tiny amount of it.
Yeah, and then you have a varietal one.
And in fact, I know that they don't really use that much in the Bordeaux blends in Europe.
Right.
But I love it in American. The California Bordeaux blends that use it. Oh my gosh.
Well, and part of the reason it gained so much prominence in America was
it'll fix a bad wine.
It'll fix a bad wine, but it's one of those grapes that
wine.
It didn't have enough prestige to be thought of as that highly in it was thought of as a peasant grape. Yeah. And
that I know.
One of the things that is really interesting about American wine is that California wine industry started with literal peasants making wine. I mean, like the people who were coming to California, Yugoslav, Italian, German immigrants, were by and large poorer people who emigrated west and bought farmland in the fertile, various parts. This was actually, I didn't know this. I thought that they were Napa for some reason. They're Alameda County, Livermore, which is a county I know nothing about in terms of wine. They're East Bay wine region.
It's a good wine.
It is. It's very good.
I'm not a big fan of whites. I've had a couple. I haven't had the Riesling yet. I do want to try those because I love Riesling.
Yeah, it'd be interesting just to try it for comparison purposes.
Not really much. I used to drink Chardonnays way back in the day, but I'm not much on them now. And they're the first family of Chardonnay. So, sorry guys. You do a really good red.
But here's the thing, is that even if the family is...
And they have much more expensive reds. I definitely want to get my hands on some of those now. Because if this is their entry level, I would love to see what their top level is, because there are places that can't do this.
I can't think of many places where they grow a good Cab and also grow a good Riesling. They're two very different climatic points of view.
Very much so. But I don't know if they grow their own there or if they ship them
I mean, the other nice thing about California is you go over a hillside, you can have a completely different climatic zone if it's in a rain shadow or if
completely different microclimate.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And also,
words are failing me.
Depending on my friend Ryan, who works for Breakthrough, was telling me about this. Depending on where the sun rises and where the vineyard is located, their temperatures might not start getting up until much later in the day. Yeah. They might only catch like the sunset side of the equation,
which can help with the Riesling.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's why Paso Robles is such a weird growing climate.
In case you didn't know it, Germany is not as hot as Napa Valley.
Yeah,
just in case you didn't know it.
But
probably I shouldn't whisper because I don't think that microphone can pick it up.
But also, what's weird is that we were talking. We talk all the time about. Him
and I, can you believe it?
I know. The vagaries of growing grapes in Virginia, and believe it or not, Virginia isn't always a horrible place to grow grapes. It's just mostly a horrible place to grow grapes.
I've had a couple from Northern Virginia that weren't horrible. I mean, I can't say they did much for me, but they weren't horrible. They're, it's not Washington State.
Right.
But they were better because they had the better elevation.
Exactly.
Much better elevation. They're not in the mountains.
If the key to real estate is location, 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 in Virginia it's elevation, elevation, elevation. And the reason isn't just that you're getting above the humid subtropical climate that we live in. It's also at higher elevations. The guy who owns Oxeye Vineyards was telling me that he chose his spot specifically because the wind exposure means that the mold and fungus spores blow off the grapes, which means that he can grow Pinot Noir because he's got essentially a Burgundian climate up there. Yeah,
I'm going to make a really horrible admission.
It's not horrible.
I don't really like Pinot Noir all that much.
Now, notice he didn't say Pinot Noir sucks. He just said he doesn't like it. That's acceptable.
Yes, I understand that lots of people love it and that there's nothing wrong with it. And as we've said, probably every single review, every single week, the good wine is the wine you like.
Correct.
So if you like Pinot Noir, I am not yucking your yum. I am not getting down on you.
Yeah.
I've had some that I liked, but by and large, it's not my grape.
I think you had one from Monterey one time that you really liked.
I don't remember. I mean, we've had so many of them together, but I know that...
well, you came into Wine Lab specifically to tell me you had bought a Pinot Noir, and I was blown away. And you said you stopped by just to tell me that.
That's funny. And I do know that, the guy from, Dave Finney makes a kick-ass Pinot. But that Pinot
that's Dave Finney.
That's Dave Finney.
Yeah.
That doesn't taste like any Pinot you've ever had.
Exactly.
It tastes like a big old Napa Cab.
Which is impressive in its own right because...
Yes, I don't know how he does it.
Well, and most of the time when you make a Pinot that big, they're flabby.
His isn't.
Right, and that's what impressive.
Yeah, there's so much more smoke and spice on the back end that I'm just not used to seeing in a Pinot. It's not... Don't say one-dimensional, Warren. Don't say it's not one-dimensional.
It's not a string in the string theory of physics.
I want the last glass of the bottle to taste different than the first glass. Hell, I want the last sip of the glass to taste different than the first sip. And Pinot doesn't really do that in the way that the Napa Cabs do, or a big Syrah from Australia does.
I'm not a Pinot. I mean, I like Pinot Noir. I'm not a Pinot loyalist. There are people who really swear by it in a way that's almost cult-like.
Yeah.
But one of the things about Pinot that's I think not really talked about a lot in the consumer world, but is well known in the producer world, is that Pinot is a finicky grape. It is temperamental. It's difficult. It has thin skins. It has a bad tendency to burst if it gets too much moisture. A good counter example of that is we were just talking about peasant grapes like Petit Syrah or Alicante Bouschet, thick-skinned varietals that you don't really have to worry about. Yeah. Though, granted, they're not normally being grown in places where you have to worry about moisture either. But the thing about Pinot is it's finicky. It's a tough, and it's a. I'm not saying it's a tough varietal to do decently. I'm saying it's a tough varietal to do transcendently.
You had mentioned the farmer, the peasant.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things when I was in Malta is that you could buy farmer blends for like $2 a bottle everywhere. Don't. Most of them weren't that good. A couple were all right, but it was really, for me, culturally, it was really interesting because these are farmers who are growing the grapes and they're mixing it right there, putting it in a bottle. Some of them didn't even have labels. Man. It was just a glass bottle and it said farmer blend and it said where the farm was.
Well, look at where we are, Moonshine.
Yeah. And it was really interesting because I know that's how it was done 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, is the farmer. And the blend often is, they're growing a couple of different kinds and then they're done growing. They're done. They've got what they needed to make the bottles, the allotted bottles, or fill the allotted barrels of the different varietals, and then they've got leftover. And not enough to do anything with of any particular kind. And you throw them all together and you get the farmer's blend. Which is kind of interesting. So I was buying them just to see what they didn't say what they were, to see what I could taste, what was going on. I mean, I didn't even enjoy them that much, but got to be kind of a game. What do I think is in this one?
Well, you think about it, those are the lower shelf of the grocery store here in America. It's just that you're buying it fresh from the people who made it, as opposed to having it
doesn't have. These didn't have any of the additives.
No. I just meant they're the equivalent.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think
they're
I don't think
than
Liberty
that.
Creek has any additives, or it might be slightly better.
Oh, sorry, guys. Not sorry.
We're not going to get any money from Liberty Creek for any of the episodes that we do.
No, we're not.
And I mean,
I don't want you to trust us because we're telling you the truth.
And I don't ever want to sound like I had a saying when I was getting started at Chateau Morissette. People would feel the need. I filled the role of a priest.
Yeah.
They came to me and confessed that they liked certain wines as if I were going to judge them, and I said, I don't ever judge anybody for liking Yellowtail. I judge you for staying there.
Yeah.
The-
Well, it depends. If you only drink one bottle every year, you're probably not
Well,
moving.
okay, but those people
You're
aren't
right,
going to
you're right.
apologize.
I'm just
to me.
nitpicking.
Right.
I'm just nitpicking.
These are
Yeah.
people. These are people who clearly
Right. They're
wanted
not going to
Yeah.
apologize. You're right. You're right.
And I'm not judging those people because wine's not their thing.
Right.
You know, if a certain thing is not your thing,
I feel
and
for them. I feel
Yeah.
sad for them. But
Well, it's one of those things where to certain types of palates, wines that we consider really good seem overwhelming and,
Yes.
and thrash their palate and
I'm
you know.
fully aware of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to just bring big Napa cabs to
Mhm.
party, and then I realized that half the people there were just like,
Oh my
you know,
God,
they were
what's
just
going
like,
on
what,
here?
What is this? You know, it's in my face. It's like there's all this, and then I started bringing some less, not quite so big. People are like, oh, this is so good. I'm like, got it.
I had to have a talk with my 22-year-old self because I was like, I heard a rumor that you didn't like Lafroig. And he said, dude, you're 15 years older than me. You have 15 years worth of experience and palate training. And I was like, that's fair.
And that matters, because when I first started drinking wine, I just drank sweet, crappy wines with my wife. And then,
Something that won't challenge your palate and gives you that nice little...
But every now and then I'd have a Chardonnay.
Yeah.
You know, and
a Riesling or
well,
a less sweet Riesling.
Rieslings I was introduced to later. I mean, I had Our Dog Blue. It was
Right.
the only Riesling I'd ever had.
Which for a minute was actually pretty darn good. That's
when they
another
were
story.
buying their grapes from Washington.
Correct.
Before they went for cheaper grapes.
In North Carolina.
Dude. Yes. Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. I thought they were from California.
Some of them were from California. We were getting some of our Riesling from North Carolina. Not a lot of it. Not the predominant
If
amount.
you like the wines we talk about, don't buy Chateau Morisset. Now, if you
I haven't
really
tried
like
the
their
varietals
sweet
recently.
wines, as far as sweet wines go, they're not horrible. I mean, they're sweet.
I'm gonna have- I'm gonna-
Duplin. Think Duplin, and slightly better than Duplin.
Correct. The Sweet Mountain Laurel, the Red Mountain Laurel, those types of
The
things
Our Dog
definitely.
Blue, yeah.
But
Chamborts and
I have not tried their varietals recently.
yeah.
um,
Well, I mean, they don't change much.
Well, but I mean,
Well, they do have a new wine.
every so often. Every so often, you get that 2002, that 2005, that 2010. 2010 wasn't quite like 2005, but
we will talk about this vineyard way more than it deserves
because it's literally like just over there.
It is over the hill. It's that
Yes.
way, actually.
Okay.
It is it's less than 7 miles from here, and Will used to work there.
Yes.
as their
That's where I got my sommelier certification.
Yeah.
It was kind of an interesting thing because, sommeliers generally work in a restaurant and recommend wines based on a rotating list where consulting a sommelier is necessary.
And of course, telling them to pair with the most expensive meal they have in the
Right,
restaurant.
exactly. When you work at a winery and your wines change like once every couple of months and you're introducing new vintages on I have still to this day I have no idea what the general manager sent me to sommelier school, but I'm eternally grateful that the company picked up the tab.
Indeed. So, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, George, wherever you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Chateau Morisset, I have a soft spot for them. It's not just because I worked there. They were trying really hard and working, playing an uphill battle against a couple of things. One is the aforementioned
Back to
Virginia climate.
Virginia, yeah.
Yeah, and the other is
On the
just
side of the
the
hill.
bad press of the sweet wines that they make.
Yeah.
There were the number of people I talked to who, unlike you, have never had the varietals, who say, "Oh, all Chateau Morisset makes the sweet wines." I'm like, "No, they make others.
No.
You're welcome not
They
to
make-
like their varietals, but you have to try
They
them.
make a Cabernet.
You have to try them
They make
first
both
and
a
then
Syrah,
dislike them."
They make both a Cabernet Sauvignon and a
Cab Franc.
Cab Franc. Yeah, they do them both.
In fact, after I left, they expanded their red selection. They began making something called an archival, which was some kind of red blend. And
I think it's their. What did they have, a Meritage?
Yeah, I think that is their
I think
Meritage.
it's their Meritage blended with, and I'm probably wrong, so I'm not going to say it, but I think their Meritage is in there.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And it made me kind of go like, wow, you guys got more baller after I left. Like I feel like a little left out here. But it was cool because I'm actually friends with two of the former winemakers. So I was
go
able
through winemakers in a way that a good
business
should
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's, I mean, part of the problem for any winery is that you want to hold on to a winemaker, and it's not just because he's good or whatever. You want to nail a consistent style.
Right, so the people know they like your winemaker and they like your wine.
Yeah.
Because, when Dave Finney left The Prisoner,
Yes.
I can tell you, I'm looking at my notes from when I first started.
It went downhill.
It's not the same wine.
Mhm.
The Prisoner is not. today what it was then.
Right.
And they have, their Mercury head's quite good, so whoever's doing their wines,
Yes.
is doing all right, unless Dave Finney did the Mercury head. I always kind of have a hard time remembering which one's Finney and which one's Mercury head without Finney versus Mercury head. Listen to me. Which one is the Prisoner winemaker without Mercury head?
Now, is Dave Finney still part of Orange Swift?
Christ, I'm having trouble.
Or is Orange Swift, has he not left Orange Swift?
Those are the words. Start over again. Yeah, I often have a hard time figuring out.
Well, the Prisoner is its own wine company.
Right, but the Orange Swift wines
right.
were Dave Finney.
And then he left. Right.
And so,
but they'd already sold the Prisoner at that point, so that was already not Dave Finney.
I mean, but I love Mercury Head, very good wine. Machete's quite good.
And this is the problem with establishing a brand if you're not establishing consistency behind the brand. The brand itself, I mean, you will still have customers.
The first 2 bottles I had, the first 2 years it was out, I really liked it. I don't like it now.
Right.
It didn't stay the same. It seems to me, they lowered the quality of the wine.
Oh, yeah. No.
Of course, there's the horrible pun in the name.
Right.
But, of course,
you and I had, I don't remember which vintages it was, but this was years ago. This was probably like 2013, 2014.
Yep.
I seem to remember when it was.
We're both impressed with it.
We liked it, and then it wasn't long after that. That downgrade happened. Yeah. And it was one of those things where I don't have an eidetic memory, but I have a pretty decent memory, and I can also, like, if I was impressed by a wine going into it, and it's the first wine that we've had, so I don't have that kind of like, oh, I'm tipsy and I feel good about life, and I'm benevolent. It's just kind of like, okay, I'm tasting it. It's the first thing I taste. If I liked it one time and I have it again and I don't feel as impressed, I'm like, okay, something happened.
Yeah.
And if it's different vintages, I'm like, did you change winemakers? Did ownership change? And by and large, it's not always that owners will decide to start going and sticking their fingers in the pie. All they have to do is just hire a different winemaker.
Yeah. Or source their grapes.
Or source their fruit differently. Absolutely. In a place like California.
Change it. That will really change it.
So, there are Washington growers who sell to Oregonian winemakers. And if you are as geeky about it as I am, you'll find out who else they sell to and hunt down those wineries.
Yeah.
Part of it is because the fruit's good, but you also want to see if they're doing as good a job with it or better.
So getting back to the Wente here, these guys they're 4th and 5th generation winemakers are currently doing this, and you can taste it in the bottle. These
continuously
people
owned by
know
the same
what they're
family
doing.
since the 1880s. The German family. Wente is a German name of Slavic origin.
This guy.
I went on Ancestry.com. I looked it up. But
we actually called them to make sure we pronounced their name correctly.
Yep.
Because we didn't know anybody who actually knew for sure how it was pronounced.
Right.
Felt a little silly. On hold for 15 minutes. By the way, their call rep was really sweet.
Very sweet.
And very
We should have asked her name.
She told me her name. I forgot it immediately because
we were very excited to ask them how to pronounce the name. And she was very delighted to get our call.
She seemed to be amused.
But she answered our question immediately.
When you call them, after 15 minutes of being on hold, I'm still a patient guy. They seem really nice.
They do.
And one of the things I liked about their website is there's a place where you can go if you're a local charity and fill out a form and they'll send you money.
That is awesome.
And that's a really nice thing to have people who care about community, and these people seem to. So,
well, I mean, if you've been there for 140 years,
you ought to care about the community,
especially if you're a pre-prohibition winery.
Right. Yeah, and these people made wine all through Prohibition, mostly for sacrilegious
reasons.
No, for religious sacrament. Yes, no black masses. I promise. That's just me.
They're not tossing any bricks.
This may or may not make it in here. It could make it into a blooper thing that our Patreon people will get later. I don't know.
I'm sure that the Wente people have a great sense of humor.
They seem to be the kind of, looking at the pictures and reading the website, they seem like the kind of people who would. But then you never know.
No, you never know. Anyway, we didn't mean anything by it.
But we like your wine,
we do.
So here we are saying wonderful things about your wine, and I'm absolutely going to go grab one of your 3 or 4 times more expensive Cabernets.
And we can give that Riesling a shot, too.
I bought a Riesling the other day just because it was from Wente.
And you mentioned that it had the brown bottle, which is a very specific German thing.
Then that was really what... I mean, it was a $14 bottle of Riesling. Generally, the Rieslings that I buy are $60 to $100 a bottle and are 10 to 20 years old. And this one's none of those. But... they signaled that they understood what German Riesling was about by the way they packaged the bottle.
Yep.
I mean, you got to pay attention. It's like when certain places call their wine Primitivo,
right, versus
instead of Zinfandel. What they're telling you one would hope,
Yes.
is that they're doing a little more old world style
Yep.
than the juicy kind of American style that we're all used to.
Yep.
And so it can be a little more
old worldy,
earthy. Earthy. That's
yep.
really the big thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is the American Zinfandels, by and large, is going to be lower acid, bigger mouthfeel, just a lush.
Very fruit forward,
yep.
very jammy.
Primitivo is rarely if ever going to be a fruit bomb.
Mouthfeel instead of you get a smooth, but it's not as silky. Sometimes
right.
it can be.
And
but like the silkiest American
more
one I ever had, and I'm trying to remember the name. They were very small, and I just met their winemaker at a party here in Floyd.
Really?
Because his mom's from Floyd, and he came, and he.
Well, that's random.
Yeah, it was very random.
That's awesome,
I don't remember. I could look it up in Vivino, but I didn't know we were
right.
going to end up there. But it was really good. I mean, I gave him a great review. First review.
Was that the one from Washington?
It was the one from Washington.
I remember
State.
that one.
Yeah,
I remember us talking about that.
It was like Wolf Canyon or something.
Yeah. Did we have it together?
What's that?
Did we have it together?
No.
I don't think... I remember you telling me about it.
Yeah.
It was back when you had found out that you liked Amarone, and you were trying really hard to get other Italian wines a try, but they weren't doing much of anything for you.
Yeah, you'll never see me talking about how great a
Super Tuscan is.
Well, no, there's been some... I've run into some good Super Tuscans.
Really?
I was actually going to go all
Chianti.
the way to Chianti.
Chianti, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I'm not a Chianti fan.
He likes Sangiovese if you bulk it up with some Merlot and some
right,
Cabernet Sauvignon and supercharge it and put 15% alcohol behind it.
And I've had a couple of them that were good on their own, but then I've had a lot of them that didn't do a damn thing for me.
Right.
So Sangiovese is kind of I will drink it, but I'm always, if I hadn't had it before, a little leery of what I'm going to get, and it's going to be 25 to 30% of the time I'm going to really enjoy it, and the rest I'm going to be like, oh, look, thin and light.
The interesting thing about the global wine market is that we've talked before about how the Americans buy more wine than anybody else on the planet, and whether or not people want to admit it, you'll sell more wine if you gear things towards an American palate. Now, by and large...
Which means big.
Yeah, but by and large, the French are going to hold out longer than any other people. But I feel like the Italians have a slightly more flexible approach to things, where...
they've got our Amarone, which is already where we want it.
Right.
So they don't have to do much with it. Although, you remember that time we had the 75 Amarone?
It was very different.
And it was very different than what the same vineyards making today, because now they're aiming it at the Napa Cab crowd.
Yep.
And the one from 1975 tasted very different. I mean, it wasn't as big. It wasn't as fruit forward.
I also think that some of it has to do with back then. Yeast, I did not know this until recently. Certain types of yeast can't get above a certain alcohol content. They start to kill themselves. Like certain types of yeast die at like 13, 14% alcohol. And so if you're using, I don't know.
Yeast, if you have a problem, there is a... No.
Well, they're going to kill themselves anyway, one way or the other. Yeasts are remarkably stupid species. They tend to pollute their environments. Wait, that got awkward. But yeast will eventually kill themselves one way or the other.
I did not see that coming.
I know you didn't. We can now get higher alcohol yields.
Yeah, I mean, 16% was unheard of 20 years
Well,
ago.
what's also unheard of was getting grapes at that sugar level.
Yeah.
Back in 1972, 1976, wherever you were on the planet, even in Italy or the hottest parts of California, you weren't getting wines above 12 or 13% alcohol because it wasn't getting that hot. You weren't getting the sugar levels that hot.
Global warming has definitely helped the quality of the wine.
Well,
not sure it's helped with a whole lot else.
No,
but it's definitely
and also one of
the quality of the wine.
I told my dad, I was like, look, it kind of doesn't matter whether or not you believe in global warming because the alcohol content on the wines is like literal objective proof.
Yeah.
We could sit here and argue about it all day long. Wine growing regions are making higher alcohol
wine in places they've never been able to grow it before.
Yep.
England is starting to think about becoming a wine region again because they've got the temperature
in
all of a
the very
sudden.
south. You can grow wine, but you can only make them for sparkling. This is historically you can only make sparkling wines because of the acidity level.
It's funny because the English back historically loved French Cabernet. Now they called it Claret.
Yes.
And there was celebrating in the streets whenever they would sign a peace
treaty with France,
so that they could have the French red wine again because they just couldn't make anything
one of the reasons that Portuguese and Spanish wine became really, really popular in England was that
because they could get it
right. Well, but England and Portugal, I didn't know this. England and Portugal always had a pretty cordial mercantile relationship.
Yeah.
They both had a strong ocean-going, not just navies, but they were both very mercantile. They went places and they traded.
Right.
And so a lot of British mercantile companies just had offices in Oporto. And the Portuguese were just developing a type of fortified wine that they named after, Oporto, which the English shortened to port. And a lot of merchants who had been doing other stuff just decided to divest all their other assets and just start trading entirely in wine, which is why if you go to Oporto to this day, you'll see Dow's, Sandemans, Coburns. Coburns is actually a Scottish dude who was fighting with the English army during the Napoleonic Wars. And the French tried to burn Portuguese vineyards just to give a middle finger to the English. Well, it was literally just spiteful. And so the English sent, I don't know how many thousands of soldiers to defend these Portuguese vineyards. And quite a few English
soldiers. Had to make a couple of friends in Portugal.
Yeah, and they also were just like, this country is beautiful. And so this one guy, a Scottish guy named Coburn, once he mustered out at the end of the war, I guess he probably got a pretty substantial payout for having, fought and.
If you made a vineyard with it, probably so.
So so he bought a port house, and I assume some and you can drink his port to this day. That's one of the things I find is very interesting is that nowadays there's a very proprietary aspect to a lot of things. I mean, it's like California is one thing because you had a lot of immigrants move there, but they've been there for a couple of hundred years.
I don't remember the vineyard. Do you remember that one we had that it said it was a special varietal, and it was 100% Merlot?
No, I don't remember that.
I was just like, cool story, bro.
Yeah, maybe it was like a special clone of it. Because one thing we should talk about is the reason that Wente is on the map for a lot of people. Not just on the consumer side, is that they have a Chardonnay clone, a specific type of varietal, and
first family of Chardonnay.
Yeah, and if you were planting Chardonnay in California,
you'd want their grapes.
And what he and I were talking about is Chardonnay is such a chameleon. You can do so much with it. You can put it through full malolactic fermentation, which will lower the overall acidity and give it sort of a richer mouthfeel. You can put it in oak. You can not put it in oak. You can do nothing to it.
I like it oak and buttery.
Yep. If you do nothing to it, it actually you could bring it to a Pinot Grigio tasting and nobody will be able to tell the difference. That's the interesting thing about Chardonnay. It's
don't like it in cement because you can't tell the difference.
Right. But the thing about the production side of Chardonnay is that it's basically impossible to say whether or not you don't like Chardonnay the grape. What you don't like about it is what's been done to it or not been done to it as a result of the winemaking process.
And the interesting thing about Chardonnay, it is the one white wine that if you do a blind tasting, I mean a true blind tasting, where you can't even see what you're drinking, and they do those, people often can't tell it's actually a white wine.
Oh, if you serve an oaky buttery Chardonnay at room temp,
people think it's red.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
No, they do a thing where they serve it in black glasses,
yes,
so you can't even see it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm talking about. In those tastings, 90% of people can't tell you that it's a white wine.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, there are Chardonnays that I've had at room temperature.
But
I mean, the thing is that if you're used to drinking red wines that only taste like the oak they're made in, and you drink a very oaky Chardonnay,
yeah, no, I can see it.
And you've had no other palate training, then yeah, absolutely. But I mean, with any Chardonnay, if you're really looking for it and you're listening to what your palate is telling you, you're gonna start picking up like fig and apricot and be like, wait a minute, no red wine I've ever had tastes like pear.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But I mean, at room temperature, I will say this: the oak stands out a lot more.
Well, I mean, it's funny because we've had, just to see what would happen.
Yeah.
We're weird, folks. You may not want to try this at home, but we've had Rieslings that are 20 years old, and we had the first glass before we even chilled the thing to just see what comes up.
Yep.
When you don't have the iciness hitting your tongue and numbing your tongue and taking away your receptors so that you can't really taste it.
Acidity is way more perceptible at room temperature.
You can taste a whole lot more in those Rieslings.
Yep.
And the thing about Rieslings that I love is you can taste more in them than any other whites I can think of, any varietal. They are the only ones that can get wildly complex, but they're even more complex when they're warm. They're, however, more enjoyable.
They are more enjoyable when they're cold.
But it is interesting if you're somebody who's like really into wine. We might be.
Yes,
I think we're
a little bit.
We might be into
a little
wine.
bit.
To just sometimes try wines that you usually, I wouldn't really recommend wines you usually drink warm, cold.
Right.
But the ones you drink cold, try them warm now.
Yeah,
and then.
and
It's interesting.
And you can always you always bring them down by sticking them in the freezer.
Yeah, if you don't like them, put them back in the fridge and drink them later in the day, tomorrow, whatever.
Well, here's the thing about cold is that cold raises your perception of bitterness, tannin, and acidity, and it lowers your perception of sweetness.
If you don't like dry wines, you want to stay away from that.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is that this is where the Chardonnay thing gets tricky, because for me, perfect temperature to serve a Chardonnay is neither what I would call cold nor room temperature. It's right in the middle, like a solid 50, 55 degrees, because the evolution that happens for a Chardonnay between 50 and 55 degrees happens for a red around 58 to 60 degrees.
And I like my reds between 55 and 60.
Right, exactly.
That's where I like them. That's what my...
And the oakier the Chardonnay, the more you can raise that baseline temperature.
My cellar stays between 40 and 70 because it's a burned-in building with...
I would say it stays probably pretty close to 50.
Yeah, it's usually
even during the winter time, because it's got the earth around it.
Burned, so it doesn't get cold.
It's not quite geothermal because some of it is above ground, but it's surrounded on three sides by a good.
And at some point, we will have a picture for you to see.
It's a beautiful freaking cellar.
It is.
It looks like it's guarded by the Fae.
Yeah, it is.
It's even got the Green Man on the door.
You will not have seen anything like it in your travels.
It does look like you could pixelize it and put on.
He's
the cover
looking
of the
at it because you can see
yes,
it from here.
I'm
we are
admiring
in
it from
the
here.
gazebo, so because we just love this spot. This is where
it's a great
drank.
spot.
You can hear the frogs in the
background.
background.
Hear the birds.
We are not at the point in the year when all you can hear is the frogs, and you would just see our lips moving. But and it's my front yard. It's my front yard,
and we get some great bird life around here too.
We sure do.
I heard a Rufus-sided towhee, eastern towhee,
all day long,
singing up
telling
in
us
the
to drink our tea.
Drink our tea.
And we have more.
I was like, look, dude,
more eastern phoebes than.
I hate to break it to you. This is all we got.
We don't have any tea.
Yeah.
We're drinking wine.
One more?
Oh, absolutely. Now this one, as I said, is only $16.49 nationally.
I had forgotten this is a single vineyard.
You're gonna see over time, we're not gonna do a lot of under $20 wines.
Right.
But when I run into them and they're worthy, we're gonna let you know.
Yeah, what was that one we liked that had the Circus label?
Circus de Vin.
Cirque de Vin, yep.
That was it. That was 100. That was Peachy Canyon is
correct,
the
that's right.
vineyard. They're 100% Pinot, not Pinot.
Petit Syrah.
Petit Syrah, and it was marvelous.
Yeah.
For a $20 bottle of wine, it was amazing.
That was another Republic of Floyd purchase.
Yeah,
we used to pick it up there all the time.
Coming from Peachy Canyon, I'm not surprised. They make good wines.
Yes.
I trust them. But this was a $20 bottle of wine that drank closer to 100, I'd say. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't run into a lot of those. These two I've known about for the last year or so.
Right.
We've been drinking them. Mostly with other people, because when we drink alone, the two of us, when we drink, we don't drink these regularly.
Right.
We will, but I mean...
We bring them to parties.
We bring them to parties where there will be
We bring them to Dogtown where we can share them with people, or to Parkway.
Both of these, we sat down and had these because I was basically like, Will, check this, dude.
Right.
I found this $20 bottle of wine. It's really quite good.
And the nice thing about $20 bottles of wine as opposed to equivalent prices of bourbon is that the really good bourbon at that price tends to get allocated.
Yeah.
And it's nonsense. I believe it's manufactured scarcity. Of
course it is.
I believe they're doing it on purpose.
They do that with wine too.
They do.
Understand.
They do. The Rubus and that phenomenon and
Rubus is a thing.
It was
makes
a
me
thing.
Sad. Their first year, they started because there was some Napa cab, big vineyard that had a double yield, and they didn't want to bottle it all because it would drive down the price of their $200 bottles of wine. This is the information I was given.
Yeah.
And so they sold it to these guys, and they went for $25 a pop.
Right.
And that was, our local wine guy was like, dude, you got to try this.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cheap. You're never going to get a Napa cab this good at this price ever again. And that's when I really started liking Napa cabs, because suddenly I had a world-class Napa cab. I still don't. Contractually, he could not say where he got that wine from.
Yeah.
But it was as good as any Napa cab I've ever had. Now, the sad thing was, I recently ran into a 15-year-old bottle and it didn't age well.
Oh, really?
Now, but I don't know how that bottle was stored.
True.
So, if it was in the sunlight, or it was in a hot place,
Right.
then maybe
Provenance is a big thing.
right.
Yeah.
It could. There are after a certain time there are no good vintages.
Nope.
There are only good bottles.
Correct.
Of the vintages.
And even if you store it entirely properly, I mean, you could just wind up with a ringer. You get one little microbe that somehow escaped everything else, and it decides to manifest in that bottle, and you're screwed. And there's nothing you did wrong. But there will be fewer.
And there's nothing that the vineyard did wrong.
Yeah, there will be
just
fewer
happens.
and fewer bad bottles as time goes on.
Oh, and we're getting better and better at bottling wine so that
Yes.
that doesn't happen. I mean, when I first started drinking wine, I'd get a cork bottle every 30 or 40. I can go 200 bottles without a cork wine.
And the
now.
nice thing is with screw caps, there is no such thing as a corked wine.
Right.
Not anymore.
And the interesting thing for me about the screw caps, because one of my favorite vineyards, Molly Duker, puts all of their stuff, even their velvet glove at $250 a pop, is in
a screw cap.
the screw cap. Now, the thing about the screw cap that you probably know, or you may not know, is that they were doing they were doing a study to find out if corks made of cork or if they're made of the plastic ones that so many
The
of
synthetic ones, yep.
the lesser vineyards use, which one would help the wine age better over time? Well, the blind was the screw cap.
Interesting.
And then when they did the tasting, they discovered that the one that made it, the wine that aged better over time, were the ones in the screw cap, which was just supposed to be the control.
Right.
Not.
Yeah.
And so that's why you're seeing some more top-end vineyards are willing to use screw caps.
And also, screw cap technology has gotten better.
A lot better.
Here's the thing about screw caps is that you can
we
take
will
them.
give you so much useless information.
Tune
in. What's never useless? You can amaze your friends by spouting this crap.
We will give twos of people useful information. But screw caps, I think I've actually started to overcome this with my dad. And my dad is kind of the control group for when you know that you're actually making inroads with something, because he remains pleasantly resistant to things. My dad associates screw caps with...
He always likes the wines I bring.
Oh, he loves the wines you bring. He'll ask me what you would think of something, and I'll tell him. All
I have is a palate, guys.
Yep.
I have a good palate, but
and a lot of opinions.
And a lot of opinions.
And a lack of fear in sharing them.
This is true.
That's a rare combination.
And I adore sharing wine with other people, which is one of the reasons this is so great.
Yes.
Is we can come to you and say, drink this.
Yeah.
And it's nice. We're starting out with some less expensive ones. The
nice thing about $20-$25 is that even if you're not making a ton of money, you can justify... This is what I tell people is like, look, it might not last you as long as a $20 bottle of bourbon, but what if it's... I mean, the thing about a $20 bottle of bourbon is it can be pretty good, but some of these $20-$25 bottles of wine are
very good.
Very good.
Yes.
So they might be more transcendently pleasant.
So my wheelhouse is $50 to $200 a bottle. That's where I drink mostly. But I'm not ashamed of enjoying a less expensive wine.
Especially if we can find one that really...
if it hits all the notes.
And punches above its weight class.
Yeah, I'm going to admit it.
Yeah.
And Wente does that.
It absolutely does, yeah. No, I've been noticing there's a real herbal component that evolves over time.
Yeah.
Which is another thing we've mentioned in the past. We want our wines to be different when we finish than when we started. That shows that it's not. It doesn't have like too much mega purple in it. I like my wines like I like my movie characters. I like them to have an art.
I think the problem with Predator is they probably have too much liquid smoke to give you that smoky,
and they're legally allowed to add that, right?
Yeah. There's like 85 things they can add.
Yeah.
Some number. I don't know the exact number. I could look it up, but I didn't.
I remember
we're ad-libbing, just in case you didn't know.
We'll look it up later and then admit if we were wrong.
I have a couple of notes on the vineyard that I'll take, and we'll read the stuff. But mostly, we're just going to free associate and do what we do when we drink wine. We drink wine and we know stuff. So then,
if I shot from the hip and I was wrong, I will come back and admit it, and I will read you a 3-page essay on what it actually was.
The emails that tell us we're wrong. We're cool. We won't read them, but we're cool.
I might read them.
We won't pay any attention. We'll read them. But I love to share wine, and this is a way to share wine with as many people as I can.
One of the things that I really pride myself on is that because I tend to know things, if you can prove me wrong, I like admitting it, because I want people to bring me information so that I remain an information clearinghouse. And We all carry tiny computers in our pockets these days.
The world is at our...
There's no reason not to do this stuff anymore. Yeah. We used to daydream about this moment, and we'll be out arguing about like whether it was this actor or that in a movie.
The reason you don't have a flying car is because you have a phone and a laptop.
Correct.
Get over it.
Although I heard the reason we don't have a flying car is that people are so bad at driving in 2 dimensions.
I don't want rednecks driving around here, man.
Driving in
They'd be banging into my house, crashing into my pond. So far, nobody has... We're a good quarter of a mile from the road.
Yes.
So nobody has managed... They have managed to knock out my mailbox repeatedly.
Yes.
Blow out the boxes that we have for our fiber os.
Yes, correct.
Internet
the FiOS,
that allows us to do this kind of thing here in the middle of freaking nowhere with frogs in the background. But they have not managed to get in my pond yet with their stars. That would take some doing. There's a lot of trees. There's a lot of trees between us and the road.
Now, if they did it just right and banked it between 2 of those pine trees, they might be able to just manage it. They'd have to try.
You would have to do it on purpose.
Though I was still surprised that Jordan managed to wang your mailbox. That was kind of impressive.
That doesn't surprise me. He's not the first person to knock down my mailbox.
Oh, okay. I guess I could see that. I mean, if you don't know that road.
In fact, we didn't bother to put it up because we don't actually accept mail. So we had a mailbox that nobody put mail in.
Right, and it got taken out by
it. We just put a pole with our number on it.
Yet another casualty of COVID. I could tell the circumstances behind how that mailbox got, but I won't.
Yeah.
Because this is a family channel.
Yeah.
Or so we like to tell ourselves.
Well, we can tell ourselves that now. I don't think we'll be able to tell ourselves that in 3 months.
Yeah, I don't know. So far, we've done a really good job at keeping the cursing
to a minimum. We swear a lot.
I don't think we've cursed at all.
No, we haven't. I've been very good at it because I have a kid that I don't swear in front of, so I have this ability to.
My college was really my downfall. Because the thing is my parents didn't curse a lot, and I was an aloof person who many of the conversations I had with my mom where she didn't like people I went to high school with, I was like, I wasn't really a peach back then either. I was kind of an aloof, like, above-it-all person. But one of the things I prided myself on was not cursing, and that was my way of, like, separating myself from other people. Then I went to college, and I roomed with a bunch of people who curse like sailors. Fast forward 4 years, and all of a sudden I have an inextricable habit that it's really hard to pull myself out of.
I'm able to, but if you ever meet me, I will swear.
I have found that it can sometimes be really shocking if somebody's expecting you to swear at them. You can say something really mean that doesn't involve a swear word, and it almost like hits them harder in some ways because they were expecting, because they're used to profanity, but they're not used to just being told that they're a bad person.
Now we're a little off the wine track, but that's something we're willing to do from time to time.
You know, I mean, wine does bring that on.
Now I don't. Getting back to the wine,
yes.
I don't know what it takes in California to be certified sustainable. Doesn't say organic, but you know, they are sustainable, and I'm all for sustainability and organic, especially with the organic, because with organic, then there's a whole bunch of crap I know isn't in my wine.
Right.
You know, and the thing is, I'm always a little worried these days about Napa because of the fire and how that's changed some of the flavor. This one's older than that, so we don't have to worry about that, because this is a 2014, which is what I find
and
everywhere I go.
It's also in Livermore, which means it's not in the same path that they're in.
So this one's already 7 years old, 8 years old. And
it
it's
seems
aged
like it's got a lot more.
What's interesting to me is you probably can't see this. We have had some younger wines that had a much darker core.
Yes.
So it seems that it's got a lot more aging to go in this bottle yet.
Yeah, no, I would say so. I mean, the thing is, it's just from tasting it. Like, it's not like it tastes particularly young or old. No, it just has one of those things where it's like, you can see where its potential is going.
This has got another 5 to 10 years.
It's nowhere near the top of the aging curve.
Now that I'm enjoying this and we're talking about it, one of the things I'm going to promise you is tomorrow or the next day, I'm going to go buy some of Wente's other wines. So, I mean, some of their more expensive reds.
So we can revisit them.
Yeah,
and revisit this episode.
You know, if this is what we got for $25, what have I got for $100? I want to know. And we want to share it with you.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that it's not like we think that, you know, a more expensive bottle is going to be worse than this. But it might be one of those things where it's like, sometimes the everyday priced bottle is the more solid, and there's a reason it's priced that way.
There's a surprising number of vineyards that I like their second most expensive wine better than their most expensive. I'm not going to like spout who those are,
right?
But I can think of at least 3 vineyards where I like their $50 to $70 bottle a bit more than their $200 to $400 bottle, and I've had them blind, so I know that I actually like them more.
Well, economically speaking, this is one of those interesting calculuses, which I'm not sure would happen anywhere else in the. I don't think it happens in the spirits or the beer world. In the wine world, there is a placebo effect that happens that if you buy the most expensive bottling, you might actually think it tastes better because you're trying to justify the price to yourself.
Yes.
But if you're going to have from a clear palate standpoint, you're going, no, this is, I mean, and we're talking like, you know, a $100 bottle versus a $200 bottle, or a $75 bottle versus a $150 bottle.
The first time that I had Opus One, I was in a place that would do a 1 ounce pour. So I did a 1 ounce pour. It was like $20 for a 1 ounce pour. And I was super happy I didn't pay $450 for that bottle.
Exactly.
Because Opus One is a good, solid bottle of wine. But I can think of literally 100 bottles for $100 that are in the exact same quality range with what they do for flavor. So I mean, I'm not knocking Opus One. It's a solid, good wine.
Well, and this is where price becomes arbitrary.
$350 to $450, and somebody else is charging $100, and the $100's just as good.
Well, and this is where the uncomfortable question is: if anybody but Robert Mondavi and Baron Rothschild had together co-piloted that wine, would they have charged that much for it?
Probably not. Now, other people could. Dave Finney could do it.
Absolutely.
Paul Hobbs could do it.
Right.
I mean,
you had literally.
I don't think David Michael could do it. But
no, probably not.
Not yet. He might get there. But
the thing is, Robert Mondavi he's dead now, but he
that
was.
Puts a cramp in your winemaking style.
Yes, absolutely. He was the benevolent godfather of not just the American wine, but Robert Mondavi was impressive because he didn't remain rooted in like 1960s, 1970s mentality. He was very gracious and gave praise towards certain higher end Virginia wines. So it was clear that he wasn't it was very clear that he was A, not maintaining a California state of mind, B, not maintaining a traditionalist state of mind. He wanted new doors to be opened.
You've got to let your palate make your decisions for you.
Absolutely.
And you've got to take your brain out of it. You can't let the price, the situation, one of the things, there was a study done that showed that when people drink wine with people they like.
They like the wine better?
They like the wine better.
That makes so much more
People they haven't
sense.
seen in a while, and they're having a wonderful time. It improves the quality of the wine.
Totally.
Well, that's all great and cool, and hey, what a great way to make a bottle of wine better for no extra cost and hang out with people you like.
Right.
But I like to know that when I taste a wine, I can cut through everything and get right to how good is the wine. And that is one of the things that I value most is all the blind tastings that I have done. And I've said this before because it allows me to be able to say, one time I was at a tasting and one of the wines was $1,000 a bottle.
Yeah.
Now, there was enough people at the tasting that when you do that over 24 of us and we each get 1 ounce, we were able to have some great... It wasn't even close to the best wine we had that night. Not even close.
Are you talking about the ones at Wine Lab or different ones?
This was at Vintage Cellar.
Okay.
It was the New River of Wine Club.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Of. And so we had one wine that was going for $900 to $1,000 a bottle nationally. And I think the cheapest one we had that night was $100.
Okay.
So, I mean, it was a very, very impressive lineup.
Yeah.
But the $1,000 wine was probably the least of the 10 wines we had.
And I would argue a lot of that is hype.
Well, it is hype, but part of what you're sometimes paying for, and you mentioned it earlier, is scarcity. Mm-hmm. So, is it worth it to you to try something other people won't get to because there aren't many of them? One of my favorite wines is the Wraith.
Yeah.
It's super, super. I mean, Virginia got 6 bottles last year, and I had 4 of them.
Were they all from the same vineyard, or were they from different ones? Because there's a Kaylee Morgan, there's a 100
they
acre.
Were all one. It was a 100 acre.
It's a 100 acre.
The 100 acre Wraith is the one that I really liked. Yeah. And as I said, they the case is 3.
Yeah.
Because it's $700 a bottle. They can't
Right.
really try to find somebody who's going to give them the money. They can find a
Yeah.
few, but not a
Yeah.
lot. We're going to buy 12 of them. So I ended up getting 3 of them. Right out, I got the whole amount, and then one. And I probably shouldn't say this. I'm talking out of school, but one of the distributors here broke up the 3, which they weren't supposed to do. And I got one of them, so that gave me 4 out
Right.
of the 6 that have been in the state. A buddy of mine who lives across town got one of the other ones. In fact, I was having a party, and I was like, I'm going to open, 2 different years of the Wraith. And he's like, you have got to be kidding me. Because that's $1,400 worth of wine, and I'm just going to do it at a party.
Yep.
And we can edit that part out. I'm not trying to brag about how much money I spent on wine. But at any rate.
But I think it's a good delineator, because the thing is that there's 3 things that go into this. There's value, there's cost, and there's price. And the price is, when I say price, it's not like, money's arbitrary, so it's not like there is one sort of
Right.
reductionistic price. But when we talk about price, we're talking about like the range within which you can normally expect to find this wine retail. And then there's cost. There's what you pay for it. So for instance, that Margaux. That 72 Margaux we bring up.
Well, that was coming up for $6,000 because there was only a handful of bottles.
That's
left.
the cost. That's not the price. That's the cost. That is entirely determined by scarcity and scarcity alone, and what the person is charging for it. Yeah. And then there's value. How much you value that wine. Do you value that wine $6,000 much? If you do, then you're gonna smash that purchase button. If not, you're gonna be like, heck no, I'm not
I
touching
paid
that.
$40 for it, and I bought it in an estate sale, and I got 4 bottles of it, and then I found out how much it was going for afterwards.
Right.
But getting back to the Wraith, the thing about the Wraith is, it's a $600 to $700 bottles of wine, and it's really good, but it's that expensive because of the scarcity.
Right.
Because Paul Hobbs' top wine is almost as good, and
Right.
it's $100.
Right.
And so you got to ask yourself, I mean, this one's a little better, but is it $500 better?
Right.
And the answer to that question for me is no.
No.
But I'm going to drink both of them.
Well, and this becomes one of those things where, if you measure, if you look at someone who makes, Wall Street banker level money or whatever, that I realized this the other day. I was talking with someone about how I like Woodford bourbon.
We're going to finish this one.
Okay, I like Woodford bourbon really well if I'm drinking it.
I think we're going to finish one of these because we're trying to kind of do. We're just going to talk, guys. We're just going to talk.
I knew we would sooner or later. We were talking about Woodford, and I said, I like Woodford well enough on its own, but in comparison to any other bourbon within a $2 by the glass range, Woodford always loses out. And people are like, really? I'm like, yeah, there's a banana-y quality to it that I don't mind on its own, but in comparison to other bourbons, it loses out on. But to me, it's not
Creek.
right.
I
It's
really
not,
like
but
that one.
the
Here we
thing is,
go
it's like,
off on a tangent.
No, I have
okay.
I have a point here.
All right, I'll let you get to it.
If I'm buying an $8 bottle or $8 glass of bourbon versus a $7 glass of bourbon, I'm not really sweating that dollar. Well, somebody who makes Wall Street money probably isn't sweating that extra. So the thing is that you are absolutely correct in your estimation of that, but we're not the people. Like, we are looking at it from a very different perspective than people who don't care about
I can
that kind of
afford
thing.
a $700 bottle of wine, but
Right.
I have to ask myself, do I want to spend that much money?
And there are people who don't.
Right.
And
and that would be sweet because if there were
Right.
people, because if I was one of those people, I'd have a whole cellar full of that.
What I
stuff.
tell people is like if you're sitting with a menu and you're trying to decide between the $28 and the $23 entree, and you're not really sweating the $5, you're just kind of puzzling it out. That's how Wall Street people feel about the $300 versus the $700. They're kind of like, sure, which do I like better? How am I really feeling? Do I want to praise these people?
I don't know how many of those folks are watching us. If they are,
God bless you.
yep, and go buy the Wraith.
Yeah. But I was,
Paul Hobbs too, man. You're not making a mistake there.
Well, I mean,
and buy, we're gonna tell you how the more expensive Wente's
yeah.
taste. Just not today.
And even
today, this is
even
what
Wall
we've
Street
got, and I'm
people some
telling you,
days
it's
don't
worth
need
drinking.
to impress people.
No, and this one's worth drinking.
It is.
This is a $25 bottle that I just keep buying because it's worth having.
And
it's great to have on hand when you have people aren't gonna appreciate $700 bottles of wine.
And I just think it's neat to have a single vineyard cab at this price point. I mean, it's
unusual.
It's unusual, and it's also especially unusual considering that I feel like Wente could really be leveraging their status.
Well, they know who they are. They know that people take them seriously and are going to trust the wines they make. And you know what?
And they could jack their prices, and they don't.
I see why. Yeah, I mean, this is a good wine.
Yeah,
at $20. And I know what you're saying. Oh yeah, these guys are trying to pretend they know good wines. Wait.
Yes.
We will. Well, you've already seen some good wines from us. You will see some amazing wines.
But
and stuff that I think is really freaking interesting that I've had over the years that I've been holding on to so I could do this.
Yes. And the thing is that at the end of the day, you either think that we're a bunch of pompous blowhards.
Oh, we are.
We are that. That part isn't wrong. But you're going to decide we either know wine or we don't. And
we know wine.
We do know wine. But the main thing is we're not trying to make the fact that we know wine make us better than anybody else.
No. If you like wine, whatever wines you like, those are the good wines. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you that no matter how pompous I get, no matter how expensive my palate gets, if you like it, it's good for you.
I may bash Liberty Creek, but I'm not saying you shouldn't drink it if you like it. I just bash it personally because I don't like it. But that's not me saying that nobody else should drink it or making a value judgment about people who do. That is just
the people who do. I'll make a value judgment about the wine
about
itself.
The wine all day long,
absolutely.
But if you like something, I'm not here to tell you shouldn't drink it.
We're not. We're not here to do that. We have our favorites.
Embarrassing on-camera confession. I really like the Bourbon Old Granddad, and I have read some very embarrassing reviews that made me almost question whether or not I want to drink it. Then I realized,
who cares?
I like it. I like it, and I'm not drinking it because I think it's the best bourbon in the world. I'm drinking it because it for $4 a glass, it ain't bad.
I paid $100 to have a shot of Pappy, and Pappy Van Winkle.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a bit better than Four Roses or Knob Creek,
right?
But it wasn't $50 better or $75 better.
What I tell people is, how transcendent can you really get? Past a certain point.
If it's transcendent, who cares?
Well, that's my point. Is that once you get to that point, where can you really go beyond that? You can't. There's an asymptote, and once you hit it, it's like you're at 99.999 instead of 99.9. It's like okay, they're still very, very, very tasty and make me feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm enjoying this one.
Yes, it's very pleasant.
I'm still kind of shocked at the price, but again, it's good wine, and that's what matters.
It surprised me that I hadn't heard of Wente because I have a deep and abiding interest in the history of Prohibition, and I'd read about.
He has Volstead Act parties.
I do. I have a closed by issue of the Prohibition Act poster on my wall. And I had not heard of Wente until a local rep for a distributor here in the region actually introduced me to them, and I kind of thought he was blowing smoke, and I looked, and everything he said was, because some reps will just tell you a lot of nonsense.
Whatever it takes to get you to buy it.
Yeah, and he was not doing that. He was just giving me pretty much the history that we've given you guys, and I was like, oh. Wow, why have I not heard of these people? I feel like they should have better press on the East Coast.
I picked up a bottle of this. I don't remember what made me buy it.
Yeah.
I did. I got it. And I opened it, and I was just like, damn.
Yeah, absolutely rock solid.
It's like a $50 to $75 bottle of Cab.
Yep.
It does.
Absolutely rock solid. I feel like they don't get enough love on the East Coast, so if we can do one bit of good here, I feel like we're telling anybody who isn't from California, because I assume people in California do know these people are good. Telling people here on the East Coast, if you're looking for California at an affordable price range that is solid quality to above solid, you should definitely look into.
I have friends who love Chardonnay, and they tell me that their entry-level Chardonnay is top-notch.
Yeah.
I've had it, but I don't like Chardonnay, so I'm not the guy to talk to you about it. But I know that people whose palates I trust think it's great.
And we also know that their Chardonnay clone is known for being the ones that they took cuttings up to make vineyards across California.
Right,
so
we know somehow it must be they're doing something.
Well, and also I must have had if I didn't have Wente Chardonnay, I must have had a Wente Chardonnay clone at some point because they're used so ubiquitously.
Yeah, sorry, folks. Oh, it's been a long day.
Yes, it's been a long day and a long wine. We actually finished the bottle.
We don't normally finish the bottle, I don't think.
No.
But of course, it's early. We've just begun. Yep. Maybe we do finish the bottle. Maybe a year from now I'll laugh at my ass for having said, I just swore. For having said that we don't normally finish the bottle when we do this.
One of the strengths I judge wine tasting dinners is at the end of the night, if you host a wine dinner, like a 5-course wine dinner.
Who would do that?
Well, I don't know. maybe at least one of the people at this table.
Maybe both of them.
Yeah. But I judge the strength of a wine and food pairing based on in night. You want to give away leftover bottles of wine to your guests, and the wine and food pairing that has no wine left over
is
the strongest.
Yep.
So if you ever get to the end of one of these videos and you notice the bottle is empty,
and if you're looking for pairing, steak,
definitely
pork, pizza, anything spicy, this will hold up.
And honestly, like a really rich cheese, like a good Gouda, like a smoked Gouda.
Yes. I mean,
you could maybe use some like Asiago, some like sharper Italian cheeses with this. I mean, this is gutsy without being overbearing. But I mean, definitely, it's like cabbage, definitely a steak wine.
Yeah.
Beef medallions, stuff like that.
A little extra pepper would.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Did I tell you the story about my dad and red wine and why I thought I didn't like red wine?
Here's the story.
So, when I was a teenager, when I was about 14 or 15, my dad began letting me have wine with dinner. And it was a big thing. It's like, when your dad lets you do something like that, of course you don't say no, because you want to feel...
My dad was a teetotaler.
Well, my dad had just gotten into wine.
Now and then he let me have flat Coke with dinner.
Well...
Sorry, Dad.
You know what's really interesting is that my parents let me have wine with dinner more often than let me have soda. But that's just because we didn't keep soda in the house. So
my mom loved soda. If it got flat, then I could have it. Otherwise, I couldn't touch it.
My parents tried to keep me away from soda and television and did a good job at both. So if I seem weird to the average American, that's probably why.
Oh, dude, I'm looking for weird. I'm trying for weird. I'm aiming at weird.
Yes, you are. All the time.
I'm going to hit it.
So, my dad, if there's one food that my old man loves, he loves making curry and he loves making it pretty darn spicy.
Mm.
And my dad's approach to pairing wine with food was, I feel like making curry and pairing wine with it, bam, wine and food pairing.
The other night, I had a really marvelous alligator risotto that
I saw that.
would have gone well with.
I saw that on Facebook. And what did Angela have? That was antelope. Antelope. Yes.
Yep. I had really well done, really well cooked scallops on top of that risotto. Oh, it was great.
Alligator and
you know the
scallops.
wines they had. I think I was drinking a Saldo. It is
the
Swift.
Oh yes, the one with the skeletal priest on the...
No,
no,
that's a different one. It's. I don't even remember what vineyard. It was all right. You know, it's the best wine they had.
Right.
So that was what I ordered.
But this one probably would have worked a little better because it's a little lighter. Yeah,
would have. And that one's got a little more. Damn it.
It's just weightier and more alcohol.
Yeah, words go away as you get older, and I'm old, so
yeah,
I'm losing words.
You get CRS. Can't remember
something. Yeah, that's it.
So my old man would serve curry and red wine, and the thing about red wine and spicy food is they accentuate each other.
Riesling also really handles spicy food well.
Riesling is like throwing water on a fire. Red wine is like throwing gas on a fire. So I was convinced I did not.
You get a lot of steam and smoke either way.
I did not have a palate for spicy food as a teenager, and I thought I hated red wine. And I got to my adult years, and I realized. It was Shiraz that he was pairing with his. My old man bought Australian Shiraz for the highly scientific reason that it was the cheapest thing he could find at Whole Foods.
Oh. Well, at least he was someplace that wouldn't give him a bad wine.
It wasn't bad Shiraz, and I mean by modern, it actually probably wasn't all that cheap. It's just it was cheap. I mean everything was cheaper 20 years ago.
If he was in Whole Foods, it wasn't all that cheap.
Right, exactly. So I told my dad.
Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah. So I told my dad, I was like, I just figured out, this is back in like 2012, 2013, I was like, I figured out why I'd never liked red wine when I was 14. I was like, you always served it with curry and made the curry hotter. He said, red wine makes spicy food spicier? I said, yes. Like, no wonder I love that so much.
That is funny.
So it's like another great example of
I have no wine stories about my dad.
The wines, the best wines are the one you like. I would also add the best wine and food pairings are the one you like. Yep. Because my dad and I had completely divergent reasons for liking it.
For him it was great, and for you it wasn't so
well,
much.
And then I learned to like spicy food, and I appreciated it, and that's why I was telling him, like, I get it now. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, Dad, that's why I hated red wine for like...
I spent a week in Belize, and they wouldn't serve me their habanero hamburgers. Especially, I was told it was the best hamburger place in Belize.
Right.
I'm not really sure what that means. And so I was
you
like,
gotta try it.
And I noticed that they had they wouldn't serve it. And they had shredded habanero. So could I have some? And I just slapped it and I ate it. And the manager or the owner came over and he's like, next time you come, you can have it. And I was like, cool. I leave in the morning.
Oh man,
going home.
But still, you proved yourself.
Yes, yes. He's like, you put that on there. I'm like, I did. He's like, you're not sweating. I'm like, noticed.
My dad would order things Indian hot, and the waiter would check with him like 3 times. And my dad would be like, "Look, I've done this before." Yeah. He's like, "This is not my first rodeo."
I was in Vegas 3 months ago, and they were like, "Well, we go up to 5. Don't order 5." And I'm like, "All right, give me 4." Oh my god, it kicked my butt. And I was like, "Huh? There's something I hadn't run into in a while. I wish I'd had 3 because I had somebody's food at 3." And I'm like, that's perfect.
Shouldn't they just make 4 the new 5 and then just recalibrate the scale?
Maybe
that seems like a saner thing to do.
Because I can't remember the last time that I ran into something.
You know that for some drunken dude bro who needs to prove something, he did go to 5 and severely hurt himself.
Well, I decided on 4 because they were really telling me, look, we know you probably think you can take, and I ate it. But I was just
I'm surprised you didn't order 5 just to tell them that they couldn't tell you what to do.
Yeah, that's not. Well, it kind of is me. But...
Yeah, that is you. You were trying to get the habanero burger in Belize, and they told you it was illegal.
I couldn't have it.
All right, well, folks,
Thanks.
We probably shouldn't continue this discussion too much longer because we're out of wine.
We're just talking. Yep. That has nothing. But we're way off the wine scale. And and we're gonna do that.
Well, we talked about wine and food.
But my hope is that it's like drinking with a couple of buddies.
Yes.
You don't just talk about the wine.
You wander off
topic.
And you wander back.
Have a good time. That's who we are. That's what we do. And you're going to be stunned at the amount of stuff that we just know.
Yes.
It may be wrong, but we know it.
And I promise you, if and when I am wrong about things, I will come back and I will tell you, hey, I found out that thing. I'm going to look up the alcohol content.
We got this email from this chemist who said this thing, and we looked into it, and goddamn, he was right.
I said that wine didn't have the alcohol content on the label, and I said it was such and such, and I was wrong. I looked it up on their website, and it was actually like percent lower. I'll look it up. I do that.
So, remember, follow us on all of the different places you can get us.
Yes.
Facebook, YouTube.
Instagram,
OnlyFans. I might take my shirt off. Patreon,
and any place better wines are sold.
Yeah, and we're gonna keep doing this, and we're hoping you're gonna love it because I'm having a blast, and I'm drinking wine, man. What else is there to say?
Yeah, and
Warren and Will's Wild Wine Reviews. Thank you.